The Pope and Young Club wants to welcome you as we rally together to ensure our bow hunting opportunities for today and tomorrow. You've come to the podcast that believes in preserving, protecting, and promoting the passion for bow hunting. Join us as we strive to be the voice of today's bow hunter. This is the Pope and Young Podcast. All right, everybody, welcome to the Pope and Young Podcast. Always an exciting day when we get to announce a new world record, and so it's a good day here at Pope and Young. I'm going to let Mr. Tim Rzuski introduce our guest and the new world record that has been broken.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. It's not that often that you get to experience or see, put your hands on, or measure a new world record, and this buck has been in our data for some time. But I'm excited to introduce Jack McNaughton. Jack has the new world record whitetail, typical whitetail in velvet at over 182 inches. We just verified this buck in Saskatchewan in June. Welcome, Jack.
Hey, Tim. Hey, Dylan.
You know, I was telling Dylan just a moment ago how impressive not only Jack's buck, but the other buck that we'll podcast later that were there. And when you hold them together, one is really cool, non-typical, and then you look at Jack's typical buck, and it's the biggest 182 I think I've ever looked at. It just stands out. It's just so big. I think the great thing about this buck is the velvet is so pristine. Very cool buck. It's interesting. We'll talk about velvet, the panel process, and ranking world records, but this buck was taken, I think, in 2012 or 13, right, Jack?
Yeah, I think it was 10 years ago now.
Wow.
Tim. So it's 2014 was the year that we shot it. Yeah.
Okay, 14.
Here's what I think. I think the deer is absolutely insane. I think anytime you get a giant typical whitetail is like my I out of any animal, if I could choose any animal to kill, it would be a giant typical whitetail, which is exactly why my logo is a typical antler. I love typical whitetails. And then you cover it in perfect, pristine velvet. And this deer is just absolutely spectacular. And so tell me about, let's just walk through the story of, and I do want to get into kind of the waiting process, and because there are other people who are in that boat. And so I want to talk through that, but tell me about the hunt, man. Walk me through the story of this deer.
Sure, Dylan. Yeah, like I said, it's been 10 years now, but I still remember it. Obviously, it was a hunt that my son and I were doing when he was just finishing high school, so he had some time off, and we kind of made a plan to spend a good amount of time archery hunting that year. So we started scouting for elk for him mid-August. So we were sitting in tree stands and watching pea fields and glassing, and we actually did find this bachelor group of whitetails at that time, and we knew there was two in there that were over 180 or around 180. So we kind of were making two plans. We were planning on getting an elk, and we're after that herd that was in there as well. But in the back of my mind, I was already focusing on these whitetails because, like he said, it was obviously a much bigger whitetail than the elk that we were looking at. Was a nice elk, but he wasn't going to be a record elk. So I was preoccupied with this deer. My son could care less about it. He wanted to get his first elk, so we hunted that elk herd till I want to say the very end of August, and then which is the archery season here in Alberta. It starts on August 25th and it runs until bow season, our rifle season, in like September 17th. So you've got a fair chunk of time to hunt them in Alberta, which is why I think it's probably a bit of an advantage to hunt that season. I don't know how many states have that opportunity or other provinces, but Alberta's got a real good opportunity to hunt velvet whitetails. So we spent 2 weeks in there, and then a lot of that time we spent hunting the elk and watching the elk. But I was in a situation where we needed a north wind, and we just had to keep sitting and waiting and waiting. And I guess we all know how that is. We didn't have a tree stand set up. We didn't have anything. And then we finally, after about 10 days, had a north wind that we were waiting for. And I remember my son came out of hockey practice, and as soon as he came out, he said, "Hey, the winds are out of the north. We got to run out there and see if we can get into those tree stands." So that's what we did. And there's a lot of daylight up here in August in Alberta, northern Alberta. So, if you get out at 5 o'clock, you're sitting in that tree stand until midnight before it's dark. So you got lots of time.
Wow.
Yeah, like it's a long time. So we knew we had time. So we ended up setting up a stand for each of us, a couple of climbers, and we both got up there, and I was sitting on one where I saw these deer come out. So I was kind of focusing on the deer a little more than the elk. And I think it was a couple hours, and then finally one of the bucks did come out. It wasn't the one I shot. If I had to guess what he scored, compared to this one, he was probably 10 inches smaller. So he was a high 170 or mid 170s. And he came out in the field, and I would have been so thrilled to shoot him, Tim, right? Like obviously I'd never shot anything with my bow that big. I'd shot a couple 150s with that in the archery season, but nothing like that.
And while I was watching 150s.
Yeah,
nothing
sorry.
Like Dylan, he just makes us feel so small.
I didn't mean it like that, Tim.
No, I know. I know.
We know what you meant. We know
it's
what
funny.
you meant.
150 would be like almost a state record here in Oregon.
Yeah, we got a couple friends that come up here and they hunt or host with us from Wyoming and Minnesota, and they're the same way, right? They can't believe the body size of the deer up here, and then the raft as well. So it's a real advantage, and it's a beautiful place. Like, we live in Peace River, Alberta, so you don't have much hunting pressure up here at all. Like, it's just you, and if you see somebody out there, you probably know them, right? So it's a great place. So
that's just amazing.
So I didn't get to shoot that first buck that he was in. He was probably about, I want to say, 120 yards off into the field. He kind of was pretty smart. There was a finger of timber that came out of the trees and into the field, and he went right to the tip of that because the wind was blowing from his back. So he went right out into that, so he could smell back, and he kind of knew something was up. And then that bigger buck, I heard something beside me, and it's funny because you look at the mount on this mountain, they did a beautiful job on it, right? And but I mean, it doesn't portray the personality of that buck that day at all. It's something to see them in August when they're demonstrating for each other, right? He came in, and I heard him. I kind of looked off to my right, and he had his tail straight up and hair up on his back and ears right back. They act like it's mid-November, like they don't obviously do a lot of hard horn crash and rattling, but they definitely, he was trying to intimidate that other deer, and he went out to the field, and I thought, well, if he comes out, he was going to be 25 yards and a pretty good shot off to my right. So he came out, and of course he didn't do that. He turned and went straight away from me, quartered away, and followed the field edge and got further and further. And I could see him the whole time, but there's definitely no shot. Then he cut up, and he went straight for that other deer. He got right in that other deer's face. And obviously that other deer had just been putting up with him all summer because he's just like, like their noses were right together. One guy was just like ears back. The other one was just like, what is this? Like, he had enough. So there was no conflict. He was obviously the bigger of the two. And then I just got lucky. He just turned and came back into the field. And where I was set up in this pea field, there was a bit of a elk wallow right in the corner because it was a pretty wet year, and he was coming to water out of that little hole. So he walked in 34 yards, got right broadside to me. And then just before I shot, there's another third deer that was with him too, which I don't talk about because he almost ruined this whole thing. He was just this little 1.5-year buck that was with them, and he was standing right under my tree stand, and he busted me. He was looking straight at me, like straight up. And I was not at full draw yet. And you're at the point, like, well, is he going to bust out of here when I come to full draw, and that guy's going to be gone? So, but I had no choice. So I just pulled straight back, watched him, and put the sights on this deer, and none of them moved. So I was able to shoot this deer, I think around 35 yards. And then the other deer, I don't know what happened to him. We parted ways. He took off, and everybody was gone. And I couldn't believe that deer was done. He ran out into the pea field, and did a hard right into that tip where the other buck was, and then he died in that little patch of trees. And I think that was, something I'll never forget. There's another second part of this story that my son always loves to bring up, and that's this whole time he was calling this bull elk, and it was making its way in and making its way in, and I was convinced it was going to come into my tree stand right under my wallow, just like this whitetail did. So I ran over and I got him to change tree stands, and he came over and sat in my tree stand, and then I went over and started dressing out this buck, and I could hear this bull getting closer. So holy cow! So I came out in the field to watch and see what was going on, and that bull did come in. And he was a nice bull, and he came in right under his original tree stand and never got up.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
I think I probably know the answer to this, but I've never experienced them interacting before. I've experienced a lot of other animals interacting, but do elk run off deer? I mean, if they're coming to the same area, are the elk going to push the deer out?
Yeah, I know. I'm not a biologist or anything, Dylan, but the whitetails and the elk, they seem like they commingle. Like there was you don't really see anything, right? And a lot of times you do get a secondary chance at whitetails when you're hunting elk, especially in the ag fields, because they're using the same feed sources. So they definitely weren't worried about each other. They weren't walking beside each other or anything, but they were.
So if a bull is full rutted up, I mean, does he not push the whitetail out just like he would other? I mean, do they not still see that as like a threat, and they want to show their dominance even to a whitetail? I mean,
yeah,
I've never seen that myself. I've seen deer just happen to be in the same draw or opening or whatever that some cows are in, and a bull will run in, and yeah, they kind of roll off and peel off
yeah,
to get out of the way, but they're not
right.
gauged in on each other.
No,
Yeah, and I figured not, but I mean, because most animals exist together. Even, I mean, some people think like down in Texas, the pigs are immediately going to run off the deer, and they do to an extent, but I mean, not a ton. Most animals, have learned to coexist, and so I figured that was the case. But I didn't know if you get a bull that's just fired up, if he's just going to, still see that buck as a threat, and try to push him out.
Yeah, we watched that herd of elk like the whole time too, Dylan, and they, there was one herd bull and a couple satellites, and we saw some really cool behavior between those two, but they were definitely focused on each other, right? They
Yeah.
didn't care about the whitetails, and we actually saw a couple of those satellites fighting pretty good, and we saw one get knocked over and rolled around in the peas while the other one was running. So it was they get so focused on each other that they never paid attention. And honestly, these deer weren't there every night, right? The elk were there every night. But these deer I kind of got a little lucky because they weren't as patternable as the elk. They kind of showed up whenever they felt like it.
Right.
So in that 2 weeks that we watched them, we saw those elk every night. We only saw these deer 3 times. So they, I know it was lucky. I got them on the first sit, which is usually what happens. If you set it up your first time, you want to make sure it's right and they don't smell you, because I don't think you get a second chance at big deer like that. So we got pretty lucky in just the timing, and he just showed up with it. But yeah, it's definitely something I'll never forget.
When did it? Well, and that's kind of the hard part. Tim, what'd you say the final score was?
It originally came in at 181, I think, in 6 or 7, and we finished at 182. We actually had a small, I wouldn't say discrepancy, but antlers don't grow after 12 years. And I think it was, if I remember right, it was in main beam lengths. I think when you're measuring velvet, it's very hard to truly see the center, and you're trying to be careful because it's delicate. I think the original OM was just a teeny bit short on both sides, and we found enough there that we said it needed to go up a little bit. But 182 and 4 is its final score.
Well, that's what stinks, is because my favorite question is always like, when did it sink in that this might be a world record? But at the time, we didn't even rank velvet, and so when did it sink in though? So at the time, when did it sink in? Like, holy cow, this is
Yeah.
what did I just do? I mean,
So as soon as I got up to it, Dylan's like, so Alberta tracks the velvet record. So I was I have a good friend here, Cyril Paquin. They're from Peace River, and they shot the Alberta mule deer velvet record right beside Peace River in a hunt I was with them on like a couple years before. So I was pretty aware of the Alberta record, and I knew that this, because it's an interesting story. Jason House, who was still on that top 5 list of these whitetail typical velvet, he's from Grand Prairie, Alberta, 2 hours away from me, and he did an article up that I read years ago, and I remember thinking, man, there's a lot of big deer in Alberta. I think we could probably make a run at Jason's record for Alberta. So I've known for 10 years it was the Alberta record. I was clueless about world record because I mean, like Tim said, I didn't know they tracked it from Pope and Young. And I was focused on the Alberta side. So when Pope and Young was sending me documentation, I always thought we were referring to the Alberta record, not the world record, which is kind of
so imagine this, Dylan. The records committee, Roy and the team, they decide, okay, we're gonna take care of velvet entries. We're gonna rank them. We're gonna recognize world records. But in order to do that, we have these bylaws on the records committee that requires, at the time, anything that's top 10 all time has to be verified, right?
Right.
So now we've got years of velvet entries, and we're going to send them letters saying, hey, remember that deer you shot 10 years ago? Well, you need to now send that to us. And some of them were shot even longer ago than that, especially some of the caribou or moose. And interestingly, a number of them were from Canada, and they get
Canada rocks.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, you almost don't want to post this because you're afraid you're going to get a whole flux of people moving to Peace River or something. But all kidding aside, you have 2 panels to send it. We invite you to one. If you don't send it, we invite you to a second one. Well, then we had COVID. We gave Canadian entries a 3rd panel. But we do have a provision in our bylaws that says if it's a potential world record, we can do a special panel. I can't do a special panel for number 2 or 9 or 290th. It's just potential number 1s. So here I am sending letters to Jack. In the first year, he wanted to send it, but then there were some issues in trying to get across the border and the timing of it all. Then COVID hit, and then the next year hit, and 2 of the other top 5, because we changed it to top 5 all time requirement. 2 of the other top 5 were coming, and one of them was only 3/8 of an inch smaller than Jack's. And knowing that there was going to be one other year that he could send it, for whatever reason, and Jack might be able to explain us. We've got Canadians that are successful in getting their trophies across the border. It is a bit of a hassle once you get it to Bass Pro. The cost is taken care of, but we then found out late last year that we were going to be coming to Saskatchewan, and I could do not only Jack's, but Dallas a special panel while I'm there. The other concern or the thought is, well, what if this other buck that comes in, what if its score goes up? Well, then Jack's won't be the potential world record. It's just number 2.
Jack's went up.
But Jack's went up. The other one held. It held. The amazing thing is the OMs, when they measured these animals, did a phenomenal job. We didn't have discrepancy on point determination, whether they're normal or abnormal. Everything fell right into place. I will say both bucks, the velvet was pristine. I think that helps a bit. Sometimes the velvet isn't that great, and velvet can continue to shrink. There's going to be some more shrinkage, obviously, over a 12-year period, but it was so small. It was impressive. So now Jack's getting these letters. We're talking about special panels to him. We're talking about if we wait to the special panel, he's still got to send it, and everybody's on board. And then we go up to Saskatchewan, and my big fear is, what if it was measured wrong? What if there's a big error? What if something happened to it? Like the scope.
What if it's a 140,
Well, no, it's not going to be a 140. It's not, nobody's going to be that far off. But what if in transit or in time, the skull plate is cracked? I mean, all these fears, and You know, like I was telling you earlier, a gentleman from a big magazine called me. Jack's buck wasn't on his radar. And I think that's a product of Velvet and how new world record and rankings are to the bow hunting world. You know, something like this could spur a whole bunch of hunters to go, oh, I've got all these velvet animals. I should get them measured. You never know. Maybe 182 doesn't hold for a long time. But I can tell you that buck, when you look at it, I guarantee you 90% of the people would say it's a 200-inch buck. So when guys from Arkansas and Kansas think they have a 150,
Why you always got to be taking shots, bro? Why you always got to be?
Dylan always says, yeah, we think our bucks are bigger than they actually are. I think this would be a buck that people would, we hear this in the West all the time. Oh man, I saw this 400-inch bull.
Yeah, no, you didn't.
400 is such a magical number.
Beautiful 340, you know,
or even 370. But I don't think anybody would have thought this was a 182 buck.
No,
when he holds it up, I'm just like,
100%.
Whoa.
I agree.
Yeah. The first couple text messages I sent out, you know, when it was down, took a picture of it on the ground and sent it out to your buddies, and we all thought it was 200. Like we did. We thought it was 190, 200. And when we scored it ourselves, you know, it was pretty close to what it is now. So it's shrunk a bit, but yeah, we thought the same thing, Tim. And when I saw it in the field, yeah, I thought I was shooting 190 plus. Like he's so tall and he's just so symmetrical. But I guess, you know, he's got everything. He's got some mass. He's got great height. He's got, you know, he's a perfect whitetail typical is what he looks like.
And so,
guys, and this is
I think
just
this pushes. Go ahead, Dylan. Sorry.
I was going to say, this is a testament to, doesn't matter how long ago you killed it. Doesn't matter, you know, if it's been sitting on your wall for 20 years. If it was harvested following our standard for ethics, then you should 100% get that animal entered and have it measured and get it entered. I mean, you never know what it's going to turn out to be. Now, before Tim goes on, I do want to mention, for those of you listening and you love big old whitetails, I mean, that's what I live and die on. If I can only hunt one more species for the rest of my life, it'd be whitetails. For those of you that love whitetails, we have right now going on our Deer Slam raffle. So if all you've ever killed is a whitetail and your name gets drawn, we're sending you on 4 hunts with 4 of the greatest outfitters in the world. We're going to send you on a mule deer hunt. We're going to send you on a cow's deer hunt, a Sitka hunt, and a Columbia blacktail hunt. We're going to send you on all 4 of them, fully guided, so you can complete your deer slam or attempt to. If you've killed a whitetail and a mule deer, you're still going on 3 incredible hunts. Maybe you just have that one last magical one left that's always seemed to elude you. We're going to send you on that one last hunt. Guys, it's $20 a ticket for your chance to complete your deer slam. Here's the coolest part. If they draw Timbo Fantastico over there and he's going to take 3 hunts, we're going to still go and give away the other 2 remaining hunts. So if Tim were to take, say, Sitka, Columbia, and cows, we're going to draw another winner to give him the mule deer, and we're going to draw another winner to give him the whitetail. So there could be up to 5 winners. We also have a shotgun included in this raffle. If you win the shotgun, you're entered to win a bear hunt. It's just incredible. Guys, go to pope-young.org and get your tickets for the Deer Slam raffle while you still can, because this, in my opinion, is the biggest raffle in conservation. I don't know who else has ever given away a deer slam, especially with 5 of the top outfitters that we could possibly find. So go get entered to win your deer slam, and we're going to send some people on some really cool hunts to complete some deer slams.
And when are we drawing that hunt?
I don't know yet. I do. Well, I was told, but now I can't remember. So let me go look. You keep going. I'll find out the deadline.
Yeah. You know, Jack's buck, like I said, when you get an animal measured, you know, at the end of the day, the animal's got a number. We're going to find it in measuring, and it is a true statement in some respect that it really doesn't matter what the final score is. Oh, except for when it's a world record. That's not true. The score does matter, but you can look at, and I do this daily. This is what I do. I can look at 5 130-inch whitetail entries, and none of them look alike. You'll think one is no way is it 130, and you'll look at another one and say, there's no way this isn't 145, because photos are deceiving, right? But there's a lot of different ways a buck can land on 182 and 4/8. He could have 20 inches of deductions, or he could have 1 inch of deductions. The system is in place for a reason. Jack's buck is such a great example of a velvet trophy whitetail. It also serves the greater obvious purpose in my mind to say what a trophy Mel Johnson's Hardhorn 204 is, and let alone the Milo Hansen buck. Can you imagine what those buck look like in velvet? It had to have been just, if anybody even saw them, I don't know, but oh my gosh. You know, there are a lot of guys out there in various places where there are big whitetail taken, I'll even say on a regular basis, that, you know, it's easy to miss field judge. But once they hit the ground and you want to add to your story, they want to complete the story, put the final chapter on it. Let's get it measured. Let's get it shrined in the record book, and it will fall where it falls.
Mhm. October 15th, by the way. I didn't
October
mean to
15th.
take
Okay.
I didn't mean to take away from your mystical like add to the story. Like that was really dope. But it's October 15th. But no, I completely agree with you because what we're doing is we're cementing that in history. Like I'm putting that, nobody can ever take that from me. Nobody can ever take away that accomplishment. Nobody can ever take away what that deer grew to be. You know, it's really not about me, it's about the animal. And it deserves to be in that book amongst its peers. I mean, you're talking about a world record here. That deer deserves the recognition to be at the top of that list. It deserves to be in a book amongst its peers for everybody to be able to. I mean, there are deer nerds out there that literally sit and look at
That
record
guy
books.
right there.
Well,
Yeah.
that literally sit and look at record books and admire the animals. Oh my gosh, can you believe that there was a 180-inch velvet whitetail that was completely typical and perfect in every way, and this guy shot, oh my gosh. And they're just looking at numbers. People want to celebrate your deer, and your deer deserves to be in that book amongst its peers. So get them entered. It doesn't matter if it was 10 years ago, 11 years ago, or last week. So, Jack, what is next for you, my friend? You are now a world record holder. I think we need to give world record belts, you know, like a WWE belt. That'd be dope.
I'll make my own, Dylan.
Yeah, you got to go and get your sponsorship real quick. Just like the sprinting world, you know, your world record might not hold for maybe,
Yeah.
you know, a couple prelims.
Yeah, August 25th is coming up here, so it's bow season in Alberta coming up. So we're just we're prepping for that, right? Like we're doing an elk hunt on the Smokey River, which is right out my backyard here. I mean, so we're up the Peace River and on the Smokey and on the Peace River hunting elk for August. So we do a lot of pre-rut hunting for elk now, and I'm just excited. I got some friends sending me questions about dates and logistics, so that's what I'm doing right now, Dylan. We're just getting ready to go. I mean, just wrapping up our kind of fishing season, which is kind of what I do to get me through until hunting season starts. So I'm super excited and just ordered a bunch of Phelps calls and been watching a bunch of YouTube.
They
from
said Jason, yeah, good for
Cody,
yeah.
Cody Jacobs. I just watched the whole bird. What is it? I think it's their 6th version they did up there. Cody Jacobson and his I think its name is Donnie there. I got a kick out of those.
Yeah.
Guys.
Yeah, those two are great. They got
thing.
a great series of shows. Yeah.
They do. So they got me all ramped up. I'm ready to go. So we can't wait to get out. So yeah, in another month, we'll be out on the river doing that. That's probably about the 6th year in a row we did that. So that's the other problem with hunting whitetails early, right? I mean, there's so many opportunities to hunt other animals. You got to focus on them. And I just didn't have an opportunity to do it. So when the elk are going, we go after them. And I haven't made another run at whitetails in velvet since I shot this one. I don't think I'll beat it.
Oh, wow.
That's the thing about whitetails.
He's become a whitetail snob. Won't shoot anything smaller.
I think we got hooked on elk, and I just kind of picked up elk later in my life. So it's something that I find super exciting right now.
Well, that's the thing that like a lot of people don't understand about whitetail hunting is like it takes so much because there's stinking. I mean, where I live, there's 5 months, 4 months almost of deer hunting. And it just takes so much checking cameras and food plots and tree stands and trail cameras and trimming lanes. And there's just so much that goes into it. I don't have the capacity to go on a whole bunch of other hunts. And that's why, I tell people I try to do one big hunt every other year. So like this year I've got an elk hunt, I'm gonna be gone for 12 days.
Well, do what
Also,
you do every year and just shoot that first fork horn.
well, I'm getting there. Give me time. Um, so so like right now I'm only focused on that elk hunt. I haven't put any thought into deer hunting. And so then you get done with the elk hunt and it's October and it's like, oh crap. Well, now I got to get into deer mode, and you go out and sit in a tree stand and a 110 walks by and you're like, oh yeah, dude, I'm gonna smoke you. Smoke a 110, then you're done for the year. No, I'm just kidding. But that's what takes so much work away from it. And so I admire guys who find time, like Jim Willems. I don't know how Jim does it, but Jim finds time to invest in his deer properties, but he's also going and hunting everything else. I don't know how he does it, but I admire that. So back on the deer slam, Jack, what all deer have you taken with bow equipment?
Well, I don't leave Alberta to hunt, so I
Okay.
only mule deer and actually Peace River has a fantastic mule deer herd as well. So we used to hunt them a lot, like when I first started archery, and I
Right.
think we hunted them a lot because they seemed like they'd be the easiest thing to get with a bow, and turned out they were absolutely the hardest. Like they're unpredictable. They're frustrating. I don't really know. But we did get a couple decent ones with our bow. So I've shot some nice some nice mule deer and then whitetails up here. But I haven't hunted deer outside of Alberta, Dylan. So that's it for me. I don't think I will be. Like like you said,
You got to win the raffle.
Yeah, you got to
I'm
win.
just saying.
Anyway.
Listen, Jack, I can promise you that if I was shooting world records in my backyard, I wouldn't be going anywhere else either.
Yeah, no doubt.
Just saying.
No doubt at all.
So, Jack, a couple questions that we ask everybody. What's one non-traditional hunting item that you always have with you, no matter what, whether you're shooting new world records or chasing elk with your boy? What's one thing that you always have with you that maybe is a non-traditional, not binoculars or a knife? I mean, everybody has those, but what's one non-traditional hunting item you always got with you?
Geez, what's non-traditional now, Dylan? Like I carry so much stuff. It's for us, we use I use my jet boat all the time. It's just access.
There you go.
That's
there you go. I haven't heard
answer.
that one before.
I've never heard jet boat. That's a good one.
Yeah, because I think in Peace River, whitetails typically they're agriculture based, right? So you rather than fighting for, I guess, all the pressures that they're getting, you can get on the river and you've got access that no one else has or limited people have. So it gives you an advantage here, so you can get into areas or different behind fields and down from there. So it does give you an advantage here for sure, and it gives you access to all the species that are here in Peace River. So, like I said, there's great moose, elk, whitetail, mule deer. So we spend a lot of time on our jet boat for sure. But I don't know if that's really non-traditional. I don't know.
I would definitely say it's non-traditional. I mean,
especially as much as you use it as well. So yeah,
I think if we were to poll the hunting community and say who takes a jet boat with you, definitely be the minority that you get an answer back.
Here in Oregon, I know a handful of guys that try to fish or hunt some of the rivers and some of the islands, and they're mostly drift boaters. They're going to put in maybe float 10, 15, 20 miles in that day and hit one or two islands. It's become kind of popular, but I don't hear guys using their jet.
I think we use it the same way, Tim. Like we definitely do the same thing. It allows you to get to the area, but then you actually use it drifting, especially for elk and calling and moose. So it's sort of the same tactic, I think.
You're just way more mobile because you can get from one place to the other faster if you had to.
That's right. Yeah,
you can go back upriver. Yeah,
I can go back upriver if we hear them upriver. Yeah, we used to with the canoes, but I mean, I'm not 25.
Well, besides the Peace River of Alberta, if you were given the the great or horrible news that you had one hunt left to do. There's only one more hunt you could go on. What would it be?
We, like I had said earlier when we were talking, we've got a couple good friends that we hunt or host up here from the States. And we've been putting in for a Wyoming elk draw that our friend is kind of organizing for us for 18 years, getting priorities. So honestly, I'm just waiting for that to come through, and that'll be, yeah, I can't believe it's been 18 years since we've been doing that. But I think, Tim, that's what it would be. We got lucky that we met these people. And then, it was kind of a weird thing because it's when the internet first started, and one of my friends was just on some kind of chat thing and met one of the brothers, and we're waiting at the airport for them to show up for a whitetail hunt. And man, we didn't know what to expect. And then 20 years later, these are two of your best friends, right? They're hunters are hunters. They're just great people. So I am really looking forward to that, Tim. I'd say that Wyoming elk hunt, when it happens, I'm going to be filming that whole thing, and it's going to be a hunt of a lifetime. So I really appreciate those guys for setting it up, and just, we got to get it done because we're getting older, and I don't know what it's going to be by the time we get it, because I think it's a pretty physical hunt. So, you want to get that done before you're 70.
For
No
sure.
doubt. I fully understand that. I had to change my app this year because of my shoulder, and I was likely going to draw after 13 years a hunt, and I changed my app, and I try to draw it next year after I get the shoulder fixed. But yeah, I've been waiting a long time to hunt there as well, because I've kind of changed where, I had ideas, but things change in 5 and 10 years, whether
Yeah.
it's management or die-offs, winter access issues or whatever. And, there's a unit here in Oregon. People have waited their entire life to hunt for mule deer. And 25 years later, it's not all it used to be at all. And it's a little disappointing. I hope with the local guys there that you guys are that flexible that if there's adjustments that need to be made, you don't burn your points on something that's lackluster.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that's part of the great thing about having someone down there that's kind of monitoring that. And he's kind of like you, Tim. Like, this guy's a Pope and Young scorer. And when I told him we had this record, he didn't even know they had velvet records. Like, so he's like, what's going on? And so he have him down there is like that guy and every year he's like, wow, we got to do this. He tracks all the numbers and where we're going. And so when we do that hunt, it's going to be amazing. But I honestly don't know where it's going to be or what it's going to be.
Sure.
I'm sure it'll be great.
Cool.
Well, guys, thank you so much for listening. Jack, from myself, from Tim, from all of us here at Pope and Young, congratulations on one incredible whitetail, man. Such an accomplishment. Incredibly beautiful deer. Guys, if you haven't seen it, go over to Pope and Young's Instagram, Facebook. We've posted it. Go to our website. It's in the news section of our website. You got to take a look at this thing. Come to convention, April 2025 in Glendale, Arizona. I'm guessing it'll be there.
It'll be there, right, Jack?
Yeah, we'll be there, Tim.
On display amongst the most incredible display of big game trophies you have ever seen in your entire life. So make plans to come to Glendale and just see it in person. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Y'all have a fantastic week.